That's been wonderful. I'm very happy to be here. So, there with a friend called Mario, and I learned a great deal from Mario. And I think it's fair to say that since we met, it's been a role model to me and my friend. And it's really an honor to be here. I'm really curious to know what you think about this project. I think to some extent your views on realism would permeate my own work. I'm really curious to hear what you think about this project. Okay, so what I'm gonna try to do today, I'm gonna try to connect, to build a channel of communication between two debates that have been running mostly independently upon one another, with a couple of exceptions, with very few intersections. So the one hand, that's the debate that is, I think, devoted so much attention to, is the scientific realism versus the under-realism debate because of science. Then on the other hand, the debate in epistemology, the effectivism versus anti-effectivism about the effect. And we have heard a lot about this side, so that's good, so we can be very quick on this. So the idea, so this is a very short story about this side of the debate. So the idea is that scientific realists are optimistic as far as science is concerned. So they believe that successful and very successful science tracks the truth about reality. It is that our minds, so to speak, can reach domains of reality that are not accessible to our senses. And the kind of truth, what is important, kind of truth that matters for scientific realists, and it is theoretical truth, so this truth that concerns domains, entities, phenomena that lie beyond basically what we can observe or measure, and that are postulated for the sake of accounting or explaining what we can observe or measure. And so scientific operators, on the other hand, are less optimistic, and they say that no matter how critical our science how to be, does not suffice as evidence to assume that science has succeeded in tracking down truths about domains that are not observed. Right. So, what about this side of the debate? So, I want to give a very brief account of the kind of disagreement that is stake here, and then I will delve into some complexity. So the idea is this: the short story is this. So, effectivism about understanding is the view that understanding requires truth, so requires the fulfillment of a truth condition. Anti-effectivism, on the other hand, is the view that understanding, the idea is not that everything goes, but the idea is that understanding requires the fulfillment of a different adequate condition, which is it's different than truth and is weaker than truth, significantly. So this is a rather strong claim. So the idea is that we can understand not just theoretical systems and not just theories, but also phenomena, even without truth. So this might sound a bit puzzling or like mysterious. So I'm going to delve a little bit more into the complexities of this idea. Okay. So effectivists about understanding believe that understanding answers to adequacy condition that is very similar to the one that holds for knowledge. So as far as knowledge is concerned, the story about knowledge and truth is very short. There is not much to say about this. I cannot know that B, that something is the case, if this is not the case. So if I know that B, then B is true. The idea is that knowledge is about facts. It's not about facts, it's something else. As far as understanding is concerned, the story is a little bit more difficult to test. It's not so short a story to be told. And the reason has to do, I think, with the kind of vehicle that is involved in understanding. So I think the understanding picture looks very much like this. So the idea is that, so the key notion here is the notion of an account, but the idea is that understanding is very rarely if ever, embodied in single propositional units, right? So we usually have what people, I'm just sticking to the kind of term that is used in the literature here. So we, in Vulcan understanding, we don't have single propositions, we have accounts. And accounts are systematically linked bodies of information. Some people talk about theory. The idea is that I think we can represent an account as a kind of structure. I like this way of picturing it. The idea we have certain kind of informational units. Maybe they are propositional, maybe not. Let's call them informational units. And then we have relations of dependence holding these units, and they're interlinked, they're connected. So we understand reality on the basis of accounts, and accounts are something complex. So factivism is committed to the view that for an account to work as a source of understanding, we need some kind of correspondence between the account and reality. So the account must reflect reality. In the accounts, in the structure, we have two levels. We have the informational units, and we have the relations. So the correspondence must take place at both levels. So we have like the dots corresponding to phenomena, facts in the world, and then we have this kind of isomorphism. So the relations in the structure correspond to the relations of events outside of the structure. And okay, but there is like this kind of mirroring here, this reflection going on. And anti-factivism, on the other hand, is a view that we can understand reality, and we typically understand reality also on the basis of accounts that basically fail to reflect reality in this sense, that do not correspond to reality in this sense. Okay, this is not the whole story about it, because actually factivism is not an all or nothing method, so it's admits of degrees. So if we are radical kind of activists, then we believe that this reflection must be perfect. We have basically accounts that are perfectly faithful. Moderate, I don't think that, I go back to this, but I don't know any man who has this view. The idea is rather that for an account to work effectively for the sake of understanding. So let's say moderate factivism is the view that this kind of reflection can be partial, to say, can be approximate, can be partial. And an important distinction that is typically done is between what we might call the core of the structure of the account and the edge or the periphery of it. And moderate factivists say, we need truth and correspondence or isomorphism as far as this part of the account is concerned. But if we have falsehoods towards the edge, this is not really a problem. So it might be an account that has some falsehoods in it, but they don't really necessarily compromise our understanding. But we do need truth and isomorphism at the core of the account. And anti-factivists say that no, we can understand biased accounts that are even inaccurate at their core, at their very heart. Okay, so this full talk of core and periphery and edge is kind of metaphorical. But I think we do have a grasp of what this means. And if you take, for an example, an account of the French Revolution, so take the information that the King of France was beheaded in 1793. So this information will be closely embedded in the structure, towards the part of the structure. If you have the information, this is a simple example, but if suppose this is part of the account. So we have the information that the sun was shining on the Place de la Révolution when I think he was executed. This will be rather at the edge. Of course, there's a matter of relevance. Relevance is a bit of a mysterious term. So I think the idea is rather if you suppose, so this information about the weather is so superficially intertwined in the structure that the structure would not lose much if we were to draw this kind of information. On the other hand, suppose that this information turns out to be false or it loses its evidential support. This would be rather problematic for the structure because it would lose its stability, start to wobble. So that's the idea concerning core and periphery. Okay, so the overarching question that I would like to answer today is this. So given this kind of disagreements I tried to describe, so how are this stance is related. So given that, suppose I take a stance in this side of the debate on effectivism or non-effectivism, am I hereby committed to a certain form of realism or anti-realism? And what the other way around? So this is the question that I've been thinking about in the last weeks. And so I think there are two tempting lines of response here. So one is this. One is, okay, the debates are about different questions. So on the one hand, we have the question whether understanding as an epistemic state requires truth, whether adequacy condition, fully adequacy condition. And on the other hand, we have the question whether empirical success justifies belief in our theory. So these are different questions. They don't touch each other. And unsurprisingly, I think that this response should be resisted. So this is not the way to go. I think there are interesting intersections here. Second response is to say, well, of course, I mean, we have two camps. We have effectivism and realism belong to the truth camp, and anti-effectivism, anti-realism to the anti-truth camp. And I think this answer should be resisted as well, because it's just approximately correct. So there is a longer story to be told about how the stances and corresponding movements relate to one another. Okay, so and I'm going to try to show how the stances are related, but let me try to further define the kind of disagreement at stake here, because I want to stress the point that effectivists and anti-effectivists do agree on something concerning the nature of understanding. So they do agree on the fact that understanding is a successor. So understanding needs some kind of link to reality, needs a pattern of some kind. So understanding must understand. So let's say the system of thought of an understanding must be grounded on facts in some way or other. So we need some kind of cognitive contact with reality to be talking about understanding at all. The question is exactly what this means, and here is where the disagreement starts. So on the one hand, we have activists who say, truth is the kind of pattern that we want, or some other semantic notion, and anti-effectivists say, no, actually, truth cannot be the tether involved in understanding. And I will now reconstruct one reason why an anti-effectivist might claim that truth cannot be the right tether involved in understanding. So here is how an anti-effectivist could argue. The idea would be that truth doesn't actually do justice to the epistemic body of our best past science, and I will try to specify what I mean by this. Okay, there is a beautiful German word. I'm still trying to figure out who coined it. I'm not sure. It's not Popper, but it's. I'm still trying to find out who coined it. In any case, so sich emporieren is a word that's supposed to describe the way in which advancement in science are made. These are phrases between two words in German, sich emporrichten, which means to rise high, to go higher and higher, and sich irren, which means make sense. So the idea here, and here I'm assuming that this anti-effectivist has been reading, for example, Poincaré science and hypothesis at the very beginning. So say, okay, on the one hand, it seems as if theories are abandoned. On the other, it seems as if ruins are piled up upon ruins. But on the other hand, it's undeniable that scientific progress takes place. So we abandon theories for better theories, for better not just in the fact that they explain more, they predict more, but also that they enable us to understand reality better. And we make advancements in understanding of reality in science. And the idea of sich emporirren is that we climb higher and higher by climbing on the bunch of mistakes that we have made. I think that's why I love Germans in this group. In any case, so we can picture the dynamic of science and the dynamic of advancements of understanding. So Newton understood something about reality. Einstein understood reality better than some extent, and whoever will come after will understand even. We make advancements in our understanding. Okay, why would this be a problem for effectiveness? I think we can put this in form of a trilemma. we have three plausible, mutually plausible conclusions or assumptions that cannot actually be all true. So the first assumption is that understanding requires truth, or requires a sufficient amount of truth. I call it this moderate activity. Second, we have the idea that we make advancements in understanding of reality in science. So some of our best science provided scientists with at least some understanding of reality. And we can call it this a selective extent value thesis. And third, we have the idea suggested that most of our best past science has been refuted or falsified. And we can call it, I like to call this a form of scientific pessimism, but it is indeed a form of scientific anti-realism. There is, in a longer version of this paper, I have a longer story about this. Because the kind of the trilemma arises as far as we assume that there is a relevant intersection between the set of theories captured by these two words, some and most. So, but the idea is that there is an intersection here. So in the theory, some theories that have been repeated are also this type of phenomenon. Otherwise, if we reject this, then there is no phenomenon at all. So we just assume that that there is this relevant intersection. Okay, so unsurprisingly, we have three possible. I think it's clear that if we accept this, we cannot have it all. We have to give up on something, and we have at least three ways out of the trilemma, and I will describe them. So first option would be to give up factivity, moral factivity. If we give up on the idea that understanding requires proof, we can unproblematically say that some of our best science provided us with understanding of reality despite it being possible. We can do this. And this is a way that, as far as I understand, people like Greg, Elgin, and Anthony choose to go. I think there is one problem with this strategy, and the problem is this. I think that this option leaves us with a big open question concerning what, if not truth, is supposed to guarantee this kind of contact with the reality that is relevant for our understanding. And I want to point out a notion. Maybe there is an alternative to truth, and we have seen also yesterday suggestions in this direction. But I want to stress that, for example, a notion like empirical success, empirical adequacy, strikes me as too weak. And because the idea is that suppose we have an account that works perfectly as is a recipe for correct predictions, right? So it enables us to interact perfectly with observable reality, but doesn't say anything about, for example, how these predictions were generated and what kind of mechanisms give rise to this kind of observable things. I tend to say that such an account wouldn't be a good basis to understand reality, because understanding reality is not just a matter of interacting effectively with it, but also of interacting effectively on the basis of a theoretical background that is not too off how things are, I have to say. So it's somehow there's a kind of grounded fact. And for me, at least, it's hard to, intuition might diverge from this and do diverge, but I think it's hard to make sense of this without a semantic notion like truth. Okay, second way out, we might drop the selective extent value thesis. Here too, no problem at all. We can assume that understanding requires truth and embrace scientific pessimism while giving up the idea that past science provides us with understanding of reality. And there is a problem with this strategy, and the problem I have at least with this strategy is that once we embrace scientific pessimism, I think we need to go pessimist all the way down. So we need to face the pessimistic induction. And the pessimistic induction tells us that the fact that past theories were refuted justifies the expectation that the same destiny of refutation expects the theories that we today hold to be true with what strikes us as good reasons to do so. So this is a problem. Why? Because then we are forced to say that not the theory of the theory of the but also Also, our best current theories do not provide us with understanding of reality. And I think that already this is hard to swallow. But actually, what holds for our theories holds also for the theories that we replaced on these theories, if we are pessimists all the way down. So the unwelcome result of giving up the selective epistemic value thesis is this one. So understanding turns out to be an unreachable epistemic state, right? So it's something that is not realized today, but won't even be tomorrow. And I think that this is too high price to pay in exchange for modern activity. It seems to me, at least. I think that intuition is strong, that understanding is not unhealthy. So it's something that it's at least partially instantiated in our best or most successful epistemic practices, like science is. So if our current best science doesn't provide us with an understanding of reality, probably nothing does, nor will that do. So the question is, why do we need that kind of understanding instead? Can we resist this kind of pessimism all the way down? Some people think we can. Doppel, I think, would say that we can resist it. So according to his continuity strategy, the idea is that our current theories are so different than the previous ones that whatever happened before doesn't tell us anything about our current best theories and also about what will happen next. So we have reason to hold our best theories true, even if all the predecessors were off target. But Mario has effectively showed that this strategy actually is not a good one. It's not a viable solution for many reasons. I just mentioned a couple of them. So Mario points out this as an art of parallelism, and I think it's fair to say it's a kind of epistemic arrogance to say, we are right and whoever came before us was wrong. And also, it's also a point that Mario makes. So this strategy fails to acknowledge that our theories have clearly some limitations. So their success is just partial success. And I also would add, our best theories are also, some of them are jointly inconsistent. So just say that, that's the end of it, and we are done. We are not done. Certainly, there is room for improvement. And I think that Mario is right in saying that this strategy fails. If you agree with Mario that this strategy fails, I think it's clear that the second way out of the dilemma is not a good one. So let me say something about the third way out. So fortunately, there is a third option. The third option is dropping or loosening our pessimistic attitude towards science. And so suppose the dynamic of scientific improvement looks more or less like this. So we advance by making mistakes, but also by getting things right to a certain extent. So we are moderately optimistic. And I think to some extent, it's really just a matter of seeing the glass, as full instead of half empty. So if we are realistic or optimistic in this sense, then we can say that requires sufficient amount of truth. And some of our best past science provided at least some understanding of reality. So I think that this is the most promising way out of the trilemma necessity. It does leave us with two open questions. So some of our past science, but exactly which one, right? And some of our past science provided us with some understanding, but how much understanding? And I think that this is the kind of picture that we get when we combine factivism and realism. So suppose we have the very end of scientific inquiry, and we have the theory that tells us everything about reality, so the whole truth and nothing but the truth. So when we will get to that theory, we will have kind of perfect understanding. But then we might say, okay, then we get a kind of criterion to say, if we are in the position to define degrees of approximation to such a theory, we can say that the steps leading to such a perfect final theory will provide us with corresponding degrees of understanding depending on how much truth is captured. There is a fundamental worry. This is kind of for guys, but there is a fundamental worry about this picture. And the thing is that, of course, we have no idea how such final theory would be like. So given what we know today, it's very hard to specify a criterion of approximation of observability. We just don't have it. So this is something that just whoever will witness the end of scientific inquiry will be able to judge how much the predecessors were successful in approximating truth. So this as a criterion to judge today, which theories are epistemically valid? So which one were successful in providing us with understanding? This picture is not very useful. And this is something that realists know, of course, this is a familiar issue. And I think that this is a joint worry for realists and factorists. They both need a synchronic criterion to identify probable truth. And I think that Manu has done an incredible contribution trying to specify what this synchronic criterion might look like. And we have heard about this yesterday. And what he has done, he has specified what kind, how does the no Markov argument has looked like, and so the idea, Manu's idea is that there is a specific kind of empirical success that can be explained only by postulating the truth of certain assumptions essentially deployed and derived the relevant predictions. This is what we saw yesterday. And I think that this is a criterion that is synchronic, can be applied, and we can see that it works for some of our best past science, for our current best past science. And this can serve the aim of detectives, because they could say, okay, so we have a criterion to identify those theories that were epistemically valuable, namely targets that enable this specific kind of empirical success, because it is a reliable sign of approximate truth. Okay, so going back to the question I started with, concerning the relations between these stances. Okay, I think I have a tentative answer to this. So it seems probably this is an unsurprising result, right? So that collectivism about understanding is bounded to scientific realism. I think I also showed that things are not that easy. So the idea is that given that we think that understanding requires truth, given that we're not ready to say understanding is an ideal, then we ought to be optimistic about the role that science plays in finding out the truth. So then we ought to be scientific realists or optimists. I think this is interesting because because arguments against scientific realism in a way are arguments indirectly against speculatism. So if anti-realism ends up being the way to go, this is bad news for the factors. Now, there is an interesting asymmetry here, and I'm not sure what to do with it. So what about the other way around? So is anti-factivism also bounded to anti-realism? And I don't think it is. So if realism turns out the way to go, I'm not sure that this is bad news for anti-factivism. I think that anti-factivism can be neutral concerning the question of realism and anti-realism. So I think that an anti-factivist could be a realist. I mean, this might be a strange combination of senses, but this is possible. So somebody can be optimistic concerning the role that science, has to play in finding out truth about reality, and still defending a theory of understanding according to which it's something else. It's not truth, but some other feature theories that makes them work good as sources of understanding. I know that many colleagues take this to be evidence in support of the realism, the fact that it doesn't force us to commit. I'm not sure I agree with that, but these are the results. So let me say, and this is going to be basically my last point. So an important result of this is that even if realism turns out to be the way to go, so suppose Mario has convinced us all, and we are all realists, I think the question concerning factivism and anti-factivism is still open. And indeed, anti-factivism has been defended along slightly different lines, and not lines appealing to the history of science. And this is something that I really would like to reconstruct here, because I think on the one hand, it bears on our discussion, and it also, there is an interesting lesson to draw about how understanding functions. Okay, so the main argument for anti-factivism doesn't appeal to the history of science, but appeals to the observation of successful scientific practice, and to the observation of how good science is done. So basically the point is this is a short story. The short story is that scientists typically understand phenomena via what these two authors call felicitous falsehoods. So what are those? These are kind of accounts that either are not literally true, or are not propositional, so are not the kind of thing that can be true. And or they are fictional, they are not meant to be. So they are accounts that fail to be true in this sense. And so they are essentially deployed in scientific practice, and scientists understand phenomena on their basis. And their point is also that these accounts, these false accounts, are actually not just useful tools for prediction. They are not just tools that we deploy to interact effectively with observable reality. They are sources of insight about real phenomena. So, for example, this is a classical example that both authors make. So, if we take the ideal gas model, the idea is that by cognitively engaging with this fictional, with a scenario that is just approximately correct, but it's a fictional scenario because it's involving ideal gas. The idea is that we get back to the real world because we understand the relation holding between temperature, volume, and pressure as it holds in real gas. So we understand something about real phenomena on the basis of this falsehood. So the conclusion that anti-factivists would like to draw is that factivism is wrong because certain falsehoods, like Realism falsehoods, figure centrally in our understanding of the world. Now, factivists have replied to this. This is how they could reply. They actually have replied. Most of them have replied along these lines. So they say, yeah, of course. I mean, these accounts are used in understanding, of fully understanding, but their value is instrument. And so we use them to find out how reality is like. We find out truths about reality on the basis of these tools. But what matters for understanding is that we find out what reality is like. So to can say it just like in two metaphors. On the one hand, it's like these falsehoods are like classes that we use to train our sight. Maybe they hide certain parts of our visual field, highlight others. But in a way, so the reality becomes visible through these lenses. And as soon as we're done, as soon as we've seen the truth, we can basically put the glass aside. Another metaphor that is often used, these felicitous falsehoods are kind of Wittgenstein ladder used to climb up a wall. And as soon as we are on top of the wall, just kicking away. We don't need it. We see things clearly without it. I think there is a problem with this kind of reply. And the problem is this. So factivists depict felicitous falsehoods as they were tools that we use contingently and we then drop, or like we can leave aside as soon as the job of finding out truth is done. And the problem is this, and I think that anti-factivists are right about this, is that these accounts, or this, so to say, these falsehoods are not so loosely attached to our system. They are deeply encoded into the structure of understanding, deeply intertwined. And it's not that we are trying to give them up, right? It's not that we are trying to substitute this imperfect representations through a representation that answers to the fact perfectly. So to say it is a metaphor, it's like, we climb up the wall, but if we were to kick the ladder away, we would lose the state of understanding. So we bring the ladder with us. Also, when we climb the wall, we bring the ladder with us. So this does, the idea is that, this just tells us that the ladder picture does not work because it's, because the idea is that, these felicitous falsehoods are not means to an end. It's just, they are probably part of the end itself, part of the status of the state of understanding. So, so the idea is that these falsehoods are not just stepping stones for an account that answers perfectly to reality, because felicitous falsehoods work in understanding in light of the very falsehoods that they are. So they work well in understanding because, to some extent, they depart from the way that reality is, in the sense that they simplify, they just focus our attention to certain aspects of reality and not other. They idealize, they distort sometimes, and so on. But they function well in understanding because they depart. Yeah. I think this is a point that is not sufficiently appreciated in this factivist reply. So I think there is a general lesson to draw about how understanding functions from this, and this is something that whoever wants to formulate a plausible factivist stance needs to take into account. So factivism, as I described it so far, is committed to this picture. So the more truth we have about reality, the more truth we know or believe about reality, the better we understand it. So the idea is that the relation between understanding and truth is linear. And I was, like the final theory, we have the whole truth, then we will understand it perfectly. And I think that what anti-factivism makes us appreciate is that things are not that simple, and that probably the relation between understanding and truth is not linear. So it's just not the case that an increase in the number of truths always automatically results in an increase in understanding. So actually, and this is the point that anti-factivists say, so too much truth actually obstructs our attempts to make sense of reality. Because namely, we understand not by depicting reality in every detail, but by abstracting complexities away. This is just how understanding works. Okay, so last thought on this. So can factivism acknowledge it? I think it can. But there is a price, and the price is just saying that truth or accuracy is not all there is to understanding. So it's just one factor among other factors that contribute to understanding. So whether understanding succeeds or fails depends on many factors, and truth is just one of them. And we have an expert on intelligibility here, so I won't say much about this, but I think that an important part is that accounts involving understanding, maybe they have to answer to reality to some extent, but they also must have other important features. And one important feature is intelligibility. So we need intelligible accounts. And the short story about intelligibility is that intelligible accounts are accounts that we are in the position to deploy. We are in position to use them as a basis for interaction with reality, prediction, explanation, demonstration, what have you. But they are instruments at our disposal. So, and the interesting thing is, I'm not sure this is perfectly accurate, but I just wanted to give you a sense that probably accuracy and intelligibility do pull in different directions. So the more accurate an account is, probably the less intelligent it is. And it might be that for the sake of understanding, maybe we need truth, but we also need intelligibility, so we need to compromise. We need to find a balance between these different factors. Okay, and to close, this makes me think that the marriage between this new form of activism and realism might not be a happy marriage after all. Because suppose you had the final perfect complete theory about reality, I think the realism would be very happy with it. But a new factivist who cares about accuracy, but also about other features, might think that this is not exactly what we hope for. So if we were perfect epistemic agents with unlimited epistemic resources, maybe we would be extremely happy, but we're not. And given our limitations, we need to compromise. Okay, thank you. That was it.